Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on INXS album Kick from 1987. This is their sixth album. Band was pretty productive around this time. When you think of six albums, they did probably like three before. I think they did two even the same year. Like their first two albums were like came out the same year, like 1980 or 79 or 80 or something like that. Um, so this was the longest break they had, I think, between albums because they had an album, well, basically every year, and again, one was two. So they didn't have an album out in '86 and '85. Listen Like Thieves kind of helped put them on the map in America. They were kind of obviously Don't Change and One Thing were good underground kind of college radio, but they were getting play on MTV and those videos were doing well. I don't think they cracked maybe the top 60 in America or anything like that, but they were getting known. I mean, you could tell that they had a lot of talent, and you had a feeling with Michael Hutchence, as the lead singer, that they were going to get big. Just needed the right songs to do it. And then the Swing came out, and that sort of put their production to a higher level. And Original Sin was a great underground track, and but it didn't really have the hit really that they sort of needed. Although the Original Sin was the biggest hit on to that point, it really didn't come around till Listen Like Thieves when What You Need came, and that was went to number 5 in America. And then when you make the top 10 in America on a song, they're looking at you for more. And that's how the industry is. I mean, there's so many times where like if you're like a one hit wonder, and you're actually a fairly decent band, like even if the next song is trash, it'll make the top 50 because that's how like they want to push you to sell more singles so you can sell more albums. And that's how the industry was. So if you had a hit single, they're like, "What else you got?" And Um, I don't think "Listen Like Thieves" was also a single, and that was a decent follow up. But once Kick hit, I mean, they were just rattling off singles. I mean, I think there was 5 singles from this album that did top 40, and I think maybe 4 of them hit top 20. Um, just actually probably all 5 hit top 20 in America. Um, this album went on to sell what I read 20 million copies, which kind of blew my mind. That worldwide, those are the sales by 2012, which I probably would have said in America it probably went 4 times platinum or 5 times, but it went 6, and I would have probably thought around maybe 8 to 10 million records sold, but not 20. Like 20 is like you're getting into like Michael Jackson, Led Zeppelin territory, Eagles type territory with 20 million records. So I was a little surprised by that, but I haven't looked at sales in a while of records, but this is another 10 years on to it. But that was as of 2012, so I would imagine even uh, more so with it being reissued and stuff like that. But when I think of the band I don't think any Michael Hutchence obviously the standout of the group. An amazing singer, stage presence. Obviously has sex appeal and attitude, fun, sexuality. Like girls just dug him. You know what I mean? But one thing I think is really underrated is he has a very soulful voice, and I think that's what kind of like gives them the staying power that a lot of bands don't. Like when you look at this album and you look at like Mystify and uh, Loved One, even Loved One. I mean, just the differences of his voice and songs and him carrying sort of a ballad, but even more so like Never Tear Us Apart, right? That's how good he was. Like he could do the pop stuff, he could do the rock stuff. Need You Tonight, What You Need, New Sensation, but when he did Never Tear Us Apart, like that kind of like that has kind of the staying power to be an all-time great song, and to really balance out the album and really show the potential of what he could do. And there's not too many times in the career of music where the sales of a record equaled the quality of the music, in my opinion, when it comes to pop radios, because especially with rock music, there's a handful of times where I felt like that happened accurately. Like maybe Joshua Tree would be another one where I'm like, okay, it's a really good album. It had really good success. I think that's warranted. But then you look at something like Proclaimers, or I don't know why that popped into my head, Proclaimers, but or I don't know, Warrant Cherry Pie or something like that, or Nelson or something like that. I don't know why those were popping into my head. Probably because I had to do reviews on a couple of those online recently. But I had to. Speaking of had to, I'm emphasizing had to. I obviously didn't choose to to review Warrant's greatest hits, which I did earlier this week. But yeah, like so you think of those bands and they don't really have the staying power, and it's nice to see an album like this have so much success in it, and it feel warranted because INXS really put in a lot of work. I mean, nobody toured like INXS. Not only were they from a different country, but around they're all the way on the other side of the world, and they made it in different countries, and they toured like crazy, and they put out a lot of albums, and they were really like trying. Their success was warranted, and of course that peaked, with this album, and then going on to X was a really strong stadium rock album, and if you ever want to see a good rock concert, I think Wembley, the X DVD video is a great DVD that really kind of caught Michael Hutchinson in his extreme best, not extreme, but in his best. And I think the collection of songs is great on the more popular side on that album. Kind of misses some of the B sides or lesser known songs that I like that may not be on that. But when it comes to like some of their best, strongest, more popular songs, like it has everything. I can't think of anything on there. And up to that point, it even including Shining Star, which was their recent album. Then when you think of like their '92 album in '93, '94, and then all the way up to Michael Hutchins passing in '97, it seemed like every album kind of got less and less um, notice and sales and popularity, and that was because of what was going on in the music in the '90s. I don't think the albums aren't as good as like some of the like Kick and stuff, but it still has sort of the same sound. And some of those songs would even hit. One of them would even hit top 40. So it's just the industry moved on from INXS, unfortunately, and that's kind of the pitfalls of being a really popular band and maybe overexposure. Um, I think INXS had the depth to keep going. You know, they did some good ballad songs like "Beautiful Girl," and that were still poppy and catchy, and that could have been. But there wasn't a lot of like bands that stuck around that were in rock music for 8 to 10 years in like the middle '90s. They were all kind of like still fairly new, like Weezer and Pearl Jam and Nirvana and stuff. They didn't, a couple years at the most, and then they were kind of like on to the next thing. I mean, early '90s rock, with like grunge and stuff, was a lot different than it was by like '98. Then you had Blink 182 and uh, a lot of like Everclear and even the Matchbox 20 and all that kind of stuff. I think '97, '96 to like 2005 is some of the worst rock music, worst pop music that ever was for that decade. 1986 to 2005 was just the worst period of rock music in the pop charts, anyways. Like it's just you couldn't even put on the pop radio without hearing junk like "Smooth" by by Matchbox 20, or you know what I mean? Just like, oh god, the music was, Hootie and the Blowfish, and Blink 182 and Green Day, and just the music was horrible during those days. Just really bad. Um, but getting back to the album, this obviously the singles are really strong. Devil Inside, Never Tear Us Apart, New Sensation, Need You Tonight. Just really strong singles. But the crazy thing is the secondary songs. I think that's what makes it for me to be a higher rated album. Is the secondary songs are personally more liked, and I wouldn't say it's better. In my opinion, it's kind of better, but it's just kind of like the second tier songs that you listen to the album so much, you end up liking those songs better, because that's kind of a good sign of a good quality album. Is when the singles are strong and you still like them, but the secondary songs kind of become your favorites, and that for me is Mediate, Mystify, and Calling All Nations, and lots of good songs on here. I mean, to run through it real quick: Guns in the Sky, 2 3/4. Uh, New Sensation, 3.5 stars. Devil Inside, 3 3/4 stars. Need You Tonight, all time classic, 4 stars. I like Mediate just as much. The keyboards and the sax, excuse me, it kind of propels Need You Tonight into like the stratosphere. Like if that was one song and it was Need You Tonight and Mediate together, I'd probably give it a 4.5 stars. But seeing as it's two songs, I'd both give them both 4 stars. Loved One and Wildlife. Well, I know Loved One is kind of like a song they've been doing for a long time. Up to that point, it was kind of, you know, it kind of gives a nice change to the album, and it's a good song. So I got it 2 stars, but I don't think it really it's just not on the level of some of these other powerful songs. And then Wildlife just seems like it's catchy, but it's not really like quite there even to the level of like Guns and Sky and Kick for me. So I got 2 stars. Never Tear Us Apart, all time classic. What can you say? Great song. As soon as you hear those violins and strings, and you're just like, I mean, Michael Hutchence sings it so well, and it's funny, like when I remember going back to this album, and here's my original CD, and I do have a couple copies of the record actually. I think I got. I don't know if this is a reissue. I think it's original copy. I'm pretty sure it's original copy. Um, I I can't remember. Yeah, I know this is an original copy. I do have my original copy. I know that for a fact. That one's. Um, yeah, that one. That one's. I definitely know is from '87, but I think this one is from '87 as well. Bob Clearmountain mixed this. Wow, he's a great producer. He's a great mixer. Um, just on a side note, back in like 1998, I because it's funny because I was looking through this and my other copy doesn't have a cover. Because what I did was when I was working in this one studio, it was kind of funny and it was kind of so original for the time. Like we used to, I worked in this one post production studio and oops, we had a lot of stars sort of come through the studio, and it was sort of the mix of the people that were there, like me and a couple friends and stuff. We were kind of 20, 25 year olds, like kind of goofing off a lot, but also taking it seriously. Like when we needed to do work, like we needed to bust out a project, we did it. And the urgency of some of these clients were pretty crazy, and it was kind of stressful, but it wasn't stressful because it was such a fun environment because of the people there, the engineers that I worked with, and the other people in the studio were really cool. But then there was sort of the corporate level of there, where like the owner would walk through and he wouldn't even really say hi to anybody, and and in some respect it was kind of stressful because you never know what he was thinking, and he would rarely say thank you, and he rarely even say how you doing. It was just kind of, and I worked there for like 5 years, and I don't think I ever had a deep conversation with the guy, with the owner, and even though I saw him every day, like it was just, he was very. He was kind of like a Napoleon kind of short guy, just very egotistical, I'm sure, and was just didn't want to be nice to any of us because he didn't want to probably make us feel like we could take advantage of him if we did or something. I don't know what the reason for it. But long story short, we there was a break room, and I took this album and then I would cut other people's picture out and sort of put their faces on it. Like, everybody kind of does that now, but back in like 90, 98, 97, it was hilarious. Like nobody, I don't know, I'm sure people were doing that at the time, but like in that environment, it was just making everybody just crack up. Even them, that was like the corporate people, the owners and stuff like that. We even did it with their faces. Even they got a kick out of it, and it sort of like broke the level of like tension, in the room. And it was sort of in the break room too, so it was kind of like, okay, this only the employees can see this, but it was some customers did come back in there because they would get like snacks and coffees and stuff like that, but it was still sort of the break room. But it was just it was so funny, and I always remember that, because I remember I'd put like the head of the music guy would be right here. His name was Scott, and I put his name right there, and his face, and he'd walk by it every day and just laugh at it. It was really funny, and he was a little bit. He was obviously a little nicer than the owner was, but just a memorable album cover in so many ways, and that sort of kicked off. We just went crazy in that break room and started doing other stuff, which is even a longer story. But where was I? Yeah, Never Tear Us Apart, 4.25 stars. Mystify, catchy, soulful. I think it's probably is kind of the best song on here that's sort of underrated, that it wasn't a single. I think it's 3.75 stars. It's really catchy. Kick, 2.5 stars. Also, I'll say about Mystify is that's where I feel like Michael Hutchence show you what a soulful singer he is. There's a um, there's a video of him, Michael Hutchence, singing Mystify, and it was towards the end. I think it was like right around when he passed away, if not one of the last performances he gave, or the last sort of like, it was during this interview, and he was by this piano, and I think this guy's just playing piano, or maybe he's playing piano. I can't remember, but it's just an a cappella version basically with the piano, and he's just killing it. It's just Mystify, just does the whole song and just nails it. And you're like, wow, he is a good soulful singer. And Mystify has always been a good song. 3.75. Kick, 2.5 stars. When it comes to like the more upbeat ones like Guns in the Sky, New Sensation, and Kick, I do feel like I'm kind of underrating them a little bit. Like I only gave New Sensation 3.5 stars. You know, Guns in the Sky 2.75 stars. Kick 2.5 stars. I think that's kind of the difference between calling this album a very good album and calling it excellent. My It could be my underrating of those songs when you look at the stars, when you look at my overall score. Calling All Nations is one of my kind of like my go-to underground tracks on this. I think it's such a cool groove, very catchy. It's kind of got like a hidden gem on this album. The last 45 seconds between the funkiness and the keyboards, and it actually has like a vocoder voice like deep down in the vocals. It's such a cool track. I got 3.25 stars. It's simple. It's kind of a song here that probably nobody thinks about, but I think it's a really cool song. I think it's very close to 3.5 stars. Tiny Daggers is a catchy song. It sounds like an older INXS track. It kind of gives me a kind of the swing generation, kind of a few years earlier kind of track. It's a good catchy track. You know, it's 2 3/4. Can't necessarily say it's a very good track though. It's very close. But overall, 38.5 stars divided by 12 is a 3.20. So 3.2, really strong, really close to. I think that correlates to roughly around a 74 on my album score. I gave it a couple extra points just for you know how catchy and how just nonstop this album is, especially for 12 tracks. Like there's 12 tracks are all worthy tracks to be on here, which is saying a lot for 12 tracks because I could say Loved One and Wildlife could be taken off this and it would be a more complete album as far as but I don't feel like this album is long at all. You know, there is an opportunity with snare on the album, like most late '80s albums, rock bands. The snare is definitely too loud on a lot of these songs. Um, but yeah, it's really close. I gave it a couple extra stars, just for the overall uh, catchy songs and good songs on here. I mean, just there's no song under good here. I got them at all at least 2 stars. 7 out of the 12 are very good. So it's on the very good. I it's definitely a very good album. I pushed it a little bit higher on the very good chart and gave it a few extra points, and it's 78 out of 100. Really strong score. Is it close to being an excellent album and being in the 80s? Very close, very close. And I think that comes down to my whether you like Guns in the Sky, Kick, and New Sensation more than I do. And maybe even Loved One and Wildlife as well. I feel like I got the other ones scored pretty correctly. I Need You Tonight, it's 4 stars. Never Tear Us Apart, it's 4 stars. Devil Inside is very close as well. You know, Never Tear Us Apart, 4.25 stars. Like I feel like I got those fairly closely, but Guns in the Sky and Kick specifically, and maybe Loved One and Wildlife. Maybe I have New Sensation 3.5 right, but maybe I have the other ones a little low, and that would bring it into the 80s and be an excellent album. But I think it all depends on whether you like those really upbeat ones, the shorter ones. Kick and Guns in the Sky specifically, and even Wildlife. Those kind of tracks make the difference between it being a really very good album on the high 70s and being an excellent album. And I think for me, it kind of is in the latter. Excuse me, in the earlier with being a very good, you know. But yeah, 78 out of 100, really strong album. Can't say enough good things about it. It's has it held on 37 years later as much as I thought it would be? I think it's about on par. I don't think it's aged great, but I think it's aged well as far as it being catchy enough and all the albums not feeling like they're really aged at all. They sound like '80s songs, but I don't think it's you're not. I don't think I don't think it's aged as well as like Joshua Tree. If I was to compare it to like an all time '80s popular rock album that I'll listen to. But there's not a lot of '80s albums that are rock that I would rate as highly as Kick or Joshua Tree. Besides those bands, obviously. Um, but we'll see. Maybe I'll throw a couple. Maybe Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction would be a good one to rate. And kind of compare that one to this, just for shits and giggles. But yeah, 78 out of 100 Kick INXS.